I'm surprised you wasn't yelling at me, Rella, if I said her name wrong. He's not paying attention to me. I can say what I want to up here. Okay. We're actually going to be in chapter 3 of Habakkuk tonight. This is really going, I think this whole book has gone well with everything we've been talking about. And, of course, the finality of it tonight is what Habakkuk says. And I think it's something that, you know, as we talk about why people leave their faith and things that we can do, I think it boils down to, one, that understanding, but two, also that acceptance. But not only accepting, we're going to find that Habakkuk takes it a step farther than that. And I think that's the key to it when we're going through things in life. Of course, this final chapter concludes with the words of Habakkuk. And after he hears God's answer to his complaint, he has a final prayer to the Lord that he wants to offer. And it's not only this prayer, but you will notice in verse 1, let's go ahead and do verses 1 and 2. It says, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, a signonoth. O Lord, I have heard your speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Now, I don't know anything about music. I don't know anything about singing. But what I looked up on the signonoth in either Titus or Parker or Roger or Bill, anybody who knows a lot more singing than I do, that's actually talking about the passion that you put within something. It's that almost like a lament, but it's just full of passion when you sing it. I got that correct? You people know better? Right. Your footnote says it right? Okay. So there's some passion to this. This is, and I think there would be. Yeah, feeling. Yeah, I just summarized it. But yeah, highly emotional. I mean, you're putting everything that you've got into it. Thank you, Parker. And you think as we go through and see what he says here, you can kind of see that. You can feel the emotion. You can kind of feel what he's going through. You know, remember, the answer to his prayer, which his prayer was, Lord, why aren't you doing anything? I see wicked all around me. It's basically he's saying, my brothers and sisters, your nation, they're turning wicked. I see it all around. Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you doing anything? You're not listening. And then the Lord comes back and said, I am doing something, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. You're not going to believe it. You're going to be astounded. It's going to be hard for you to hear. But what I'm doing is I'm rising up a nation against you. And what they're going to do is take you into captive, and you're going to be in bondage. That's my answer. That's the judgment that is coming upon you. How I'm going to make this right is you're going into bondage. And he didn't want to hear that. He didn't understand that. He couldn't comprehend that. And just like we were talking about, you know, as we pray for our country today, as we see trials and we're going through troubles and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better, we seem like we're praying, we're on the verge of maybe even leaving our faith because we don't see anything happening. The world just keeps getting wicked and wicked and wicked. And then what if we find out God's answer is, I'm going to rise up a nation against you and you're going into bondage? How would we feel about that? You know, this nation over here is coming, and you're no longer going to be a superpower that you think you are. You're not going to be this great thing that you think you are. You're not going to live in luxury. You're not going to have excess, and you're not going to be able to do all the things that you used to take for granted. You're not going to be able to do those no more. That's God's answer. How would we take that? And we're going to see what Habakkuk's answer is to this. Again, as we look in verse 2, he says, O Lord, I heard your speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Habakkuk begins his prayer by thinking about the past. Habakkuk remembers the works that God's done in the past. He knows God's character. He knows the stories of God's powerful hand. He wants God's mighty hand to move again. In other words, he's saying, won't you do it again? You've arrived before. You've shown mercy before. Why don't you show it now? As he says, in wrath, remember mercy. How God delivered people before and how he can deliver them again. And God showed mercy to his people in the past. And now he can show mercy again. That's what he's wanting. He's asking God to remember mercy as he brings his wrath and judgment on the nation. And now that's all he can do, isn't it? All he can do now, okay, God, this is what you've decided to do. You've done it once before. Can you show mercy? Can you, in your wrath, can you show mercy? But let me ask you, in this wrath, in this judgment, can there be mercy in this? Is there mercy in what he's doing? Could it be worse than what it is? Is there mercy here and then Habakkuk is just not seeing it? See, it's hard to, it's still hard to be able to say, because all we see, now we're getting what God is saying, we see it. You know, Habakkuk is hearing it here. He's got God's answer, but he's still only seeing what's right in front. So his rational mind, all he's got left is, okay, you are doing something. Can that something be mercy? Instead of wrath, can it be mercy? Can you show some compassion here? Can you show some mercy? That's all he's got left. And I think that's the right thing to do now, because there's nothing else left to say. And that's what he's fallen back on. But then you look at verse 3 through verse 15. It's rather lengthy, but we're going to read it and talk about several things with it. But notice what he changes and changes to. He goes from asking God, can't you do mercy like you've always done? Then he starts talking about God's great work. He starts going back to the past, since he's thinking about what God has done before. He started thinking about that, and that's what he's talking to God about. And he's very passionate about the power of God and how God has shown his power throughout the ages up to this point. He says, God came to man, the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light. He had rays flashing from his hand, and there his power was hidden. Before him went pestilence, and fever followed at his feet. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and startled the nations, and the everlasting mountain was scattered. The perpetual hills bowed. His ways are everlasting. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian trembled. O Lord, were you displeased with the rivers? Was your anger against the rivers? Was your wrath against the sea? That you rode on your horses, your chariots of salvation, your bow was made quite ready. Oaths were sworn over your arrows. You divided the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and trembled. The overflowing of the water passed by. The deep uttered its voice and lifted his hand on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of your arrows they went. At the shining of your glittering spear, you marched through the land in indignation. You trampled the nations in anger. You went forth for the salvation of your people, for salvation with your anointed. You struck the head from the house of the wicked by laying bare the foundation to the neck. You thrust through with his own arrows the head of his villages. They came out like a whirlwind to scatter me. Their rejoicing was like feasting on the poor in secret. You walked through the sea with your horses, through the heap of the great waters. Now he begins describing here. He's describing the powerful appearances of God throughout. He recalls God's powerful appearing in Exodus. As you see here in verse 3, he's describing the coming of God through the wilderness as God led the people out of Egypt. And then also he's talking about a time as he describes these couple of places here, which were around these places. So he's describing the Exodus out of Egypt. He's describing of what took place on Mount Sinai. He's describing all the power and all the wonders that those seen from God. And he talks about how God goes out as a warrior, and he's fighting for his people. He's going out and they see all the power and all the things they've done. He says that you You went out for their salvation, he says. You know, he talks about the rivers. He said, you wasn't mad at the rivers or the sea, were you? Remember when they crossed over the river and it parted there at the Red Sea as it parted, and then the chariots and all of Egypt's army there drowned in that. Then he talked about crossing over, and he talks about what took place when God's word was revealed to him there from Mount Sinai, how all the thunder struck and how everything took place. We're going to go in and see. He describes that a little bit more. But he's talking about how God goes out before his people and how he defended them. And all the things of all the people that came up against them, how he just wiped them out. Now you think about that. Here's how Habakkuk is dealing with what he's going through now, with all the doubt, with all the anticipation, even as we're going to see, the fear that he has about what's going to take place. So how he deals with this is he looks to the past. Okay, I know what you're able to do. I know all the stories that I've heard, everything that I've seen, that I've witnessed, everything that I've heard, how you've gone out for your people. You've never abandoned your people. You've always gone out and you've always defended them. That's what I'm relying on. That's what I'm going back and I'm trusting on. That you know what's best for your people, and this is how you proved it time and time again. You're so powerful, I can't even understand your power, he says. Matter of fact, he's even going to talk about it being veiled to an extent, because God can't show all of his power because it's so powerful that man can't handle that. So he says, I know what you're able to do. So think about this. One, he's trusting in that. He's trusting in the fact of what God has done in the past, and he's calling on him to show mercy and instill him defending. But think about it also in this way. Knowing what God is able to do, but God chooses to do this. How do you accept that? How do you accept God is able to defend you? God is able to go out and fight for you. God is able to show mercy to you. God is able to show compassion to you. But what he chooses to do is put you in bondage. Now that's accepting, or having to accept and having to acknowledge a sovereign God. Is that hard on our faith? Is that easy to understand? That's atheists' biggest argument, isn't it? Either he's not powerful or he doesn't care. So he's either not able to do anything about it, or he doesn't care and he's a hateful, vengeful God, and this is what he's doing. Either way, neither one of them sounds good, does it? Does it sound like that's what God is doing, is being vengeful toward the people? I'm going to put you in bondage. This is what I'm going to do. How would you accept that if you was Habakkuk? Would you be saying the same thing? Would you still be arguing with God? Would you abandon the faith altogether because it's so hard to accept? What would you do? I think I would be doing a lot about what he's doing, but I'd probably be a little more mouthier about it. I'd probably be saying, I just can't believe you're doing this. You know, I can't believe, not only are you doing this, I'm the one that's going to have to tell them. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I want to tell them something good. I want to tell them mercy's coming. Now, he was just praying for God to do something, wasn't he? I don't like the wickedness that's going on. I don't like all the hatefulness, and I don't like all the bitterness, and I don't like all the evil and the wickedness that's around me. Do something, God. Now he's doing it. No, that's not quite what I meant. But think about it. What should God do? Just forgive it? Oh, go ahead and be wicked. I mean, do you think at this point a good slap on the wrist is going to work? Do we think just a stern talking to, give them a time out, you can't leave over here for a while, just give them a little time out? I mean, look at the point they've got. They've got to the point where Habakkuk is crying out, do something. So God is doing it. Do you think there comes a time when the judgment has to come and the judgment has to be, I've got to take you down several notches for you to get the point. It's time. Right now, you're not getting the point because the wickedness is there, but so is the luxury. So is everything at your fingertips. So is all of this, and it looks like nothing's going on, and everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. And when's that going to stop, and how is that going to stop? I mean, really put this in real time today. What would it take for this nation to truly turn back to God? What would it take? How far have we got to where, what would it take now? It's almost scary to think about, isn't it? Because it may take, it's almost like a kid. Sometimes the best way to get through to a child is take things away from them. You don't have access to anything anymore. Sometimes that works, doesn't it? Sometimes that's what it takes. Look, when you think about this image that he's doing, look in Deuteronomy 33 and 2. The Lord came from Sinai and dawned on them from Seir. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 of his saints. From his right hand came a fiery law for them. He's talking about this power that took place. Now, when you look at some of this doesn't make sense because he says that when he speaks of his majesty there from verse 3 through 8, says his brightness was like the light, rays flashed from his hands, and there he veiled his power. So you think about that all took place there on Mount Sinai, this wonder that they saw, but they only saw just a little peek of God. So what Habakkuk is saying is, I know what your power is. You're so powerful you can't reveal it all. That's why I'm having such a hard time with this, is I know what you can do, but again, maybe Habakkuk's not thinking like he should. He's thinking more on God's part than he is on the people's part. On God's part, he's thinking, this is how powerful you are. You should be able to fix this and fix this the way I think it should be. But you notice, does Habakkuk ever give him anything saying, God, won't you do it this way? He never came to God in the beginning and said, I think this is what needs to happen. He just seen how awful it was and went crying to God. And now God tells him, this is what I'm going to do. And he knows all the power. He's heard the stories. He's seen the work. He's seen all of this majesty. And yet, now this is what God chooses to do. So he's only thinking on God's side, you're that powerful. So punishment is what you're saying? Judgment? Instead of looking on the people's part and saying, maybe this is exactly what they need. And evidently it is, or God wouldn't be doing it. Maybe it's time God says, here's where you need to be for a while. Here's what needs to happen to you. I tell you, that's just scary to think about. Because you think about really what it would take to do something to really change this country, and really what would it take? Oh, is the president going to fix it all? Is Congress going to fix it all? Are the congregations going to band together and turn this country upside down? We can't get along from one congregation to another side, do anything. How in the world are we going to save the country? I mean, really. I mean, think about it. What exactly is going to happen? And I'm not trying to say doom and gloom. I'm just trying to say when we see things like this, we got to think about that when we see the same thing that Habakkuk seen, and we're praying the same thing that Habakkuk prayed. What's God's answer going to be? What's it going to take? I don't know. We'll see. But notice what, when he continues here, he describes God and how God's a warrior that fights on behalf of the people. God went before his people as a warrior against the oppressors. That's what he's relying on. I know that God always has my best interest in mind. I know that God can do this. It's like, remember what Paul said in Romans 8? Notice what he says. He says, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Who shall bring a charge against God's elect?
Is it God who justifies? Who is he who condemns? Is it Christ who died? And furthermore is also risen, who is even at the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or any sword? As it is written, for your sake we're killed all day long. We're counted as sheep for the slaughter, yet in all things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height or depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Now notice who Paul was trusting in. He said, I know nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. God knows what we're going through. He knows what's going on. He knows what's best from us. So it's a matter of what or who we trust in. Do we trust in what God's going to do, or do we trust in God? And that's a big difference when it comes to our faith. Because if all we trust in is what He does, that's what Habakkuk's talking about. Look at all that you've done, God, but you're doing this. How come this is different than that? When they cried out in Egypt, you delivered them. How long did they cry out, though? What was it, some 400 years? Did they need to be there that long? Why did God wait that long? Well, you seen when they got into the wilderness, they started wanting to go back. Were they really ready for what God wanted them to do? It took all that time in the wilderness of God preparing them to trust Him over and over and over again. What about when it looks like this? Do you ever notice it comes down to hopelessness in our eyes? They get to the Red Sea, we ain't got nowhere to go. We'll drown or we'll die by the army. Nowhere else to go. Did they have somewhere else to go? They still had God, didn't they? But all they thought about was the sea and the army. What they have to tell them? Be still and see God's work. Each time when they thought they were thirsty, where are we going to get water? Where are we going to get food? Oh, I got food now. Now I'm tired of that food. I want different food. See, over and over again, it's all about what God is doing, not about who God is. And until we trust who God is, we're going to be disappointed and frustrated by what He's doing at times. Because it doesn't look good in our eyes, because even when He does something that we want Him to do, we're not satisfied because it's always something else. We're always looking for that satisfaction somewhere else. We're always looking for that answer somewhere else. When that answer was there all along, we just refused to see it. And that answer was God Himself. But notice what it says he does. You struck the head from the house of the wicked. To say it another way, God turns the tables on the wicked. The wicked think that they have the upper hand. The wicked think that they are powerful and they're ruling over the earth. The wicked think they're getting away with it. But it doesn't take anything for God to just wipe them out. That's how powerful He is. And that's what Habakkuk is saying. The wicked think they can do this, but God, you can overcome that. He's trying to rationalize this in his mind of, why are you choosing to do it this way? I'm still not getting it. You know, you hate to beat a dead horse, but I would be doing the same thing. Okay, I've got to tell the people this. This is coming. I've got to anticipate it coming. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to resign in my mind that this event is actually going to happen. And that's what Habakkuk is having to do. But look, starting in verse 16. Notice it changes here. As he's going through this and he's crying out this to God, notice how the message changes a little here. He said, when I heard, my body trembled. My lips quivered at the voice. Rottenness entered my bones. and I trembled in myself, that I might rest in the day of trouble when he comes up to the people. He will invade them with his troops. Though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, the fields yield no food, though the flocks may be cut off from the fold, and there be no more herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength. He will make my feet like deer's feet, and he will make me walk on my high heels. I think these last 4 verses, I think they reveal the faith and the emotion of Habakkuk here. He reveals in this prayer that when he heard God's message of judgment, he trembled. He said his bones felt like they were rotting inside. In other words, he couldn't even stand. When he heard what God's going to do, he said, I couldn't even stand. He said, my lips were quivering. I couldn't accept what you were saying. That's how bad it was. He's not putting on a Superman front here. He's not saying, I've got some super faith. I took this all in stride. Everything's good. He said, no, I trembled. He said, I got so weak I couldn't even stand. It felt like my bones were rotting. He said, that's how hard it was to hear this. He was distraught by this news. He wasn't, again, some Superman faith. He said he could hardly stand. Now, the message took his breath away. I think it reveals his fear. Do you think he was afraid? He got told, you're going to be taken into captive. Here's the type of people that's coming. Remember the last one? This is how the wicked act. This is who's coming for you. You think he was afraid? I would be. I'd be afraid for me. I'd be afraid for my family. I'd be afraid what's going to happen. I'd be afraid of, okay, this is real. I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what to do from here. Because notice as he goes through this, he said, I'm quietly will wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who evade us. He said, I'm just going to quietly wait for this to happen. The day of trouble is coming. We're going to be invaded, and my fear is extreme. Now, he understands the total loss that's going to occur. Look back here starting in verse 17. He says, though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, the field yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. You realize what he's saying? He said it's not just about going into bondage. He said the fig tree is not going to bloom. He said the olives are going to fail. What he's saying is there's not going to be any food. And not only is there not going to be any food, if these things aren't blooming, there's not going to be any food to come in the future either. He said there's no animals in the stalls. There's nothing in the fields. There's nothing on the trees. There's nothing. There's not going to be anything. That's the realization of what's coming. So think about this. Let's put this in today's terms. Say, okay, God has said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Now, guess what? All the electronics are wiped out. Stock market's down, banks are down, everything. Guess what you don't have anymore? Anybody guess? Money. You can't access your money. You can't get to your money. And if there's nothing left and everybody's going crazy, what good would your money do you anyway? Wouldn't be nothing left. So you put it in today's terms, he's talking about what if everything, how you live your life, is done? You don't see anything anymore. You don't see the future of what's going to be there anymore. You're at the mercy of whatever's coming. Whatever they decide to provide for you, whatever they decide to give you, ever how much they decide to spare you, that's all that's coming. Now, does that give you a little bit of feeling what Habakkuk's feeling here? When he said, I trembled, my bones felt like they were rotting. My lip quivered when you told me this.
You didn't know it was going to get bad this much on Wednesday night, did you? I mean, think about it. This is what he's feeling here. This is what he's going through. Everything as you know it right now stops. Okay, if that happened, where would your faith be? If you couldn't access money, if only food that you had access to getting, what's in your refrigerator or in your cabinets right now. And if they come pretty quick, they're going to take that from you anyway. So you're at their complete mercy. Well, what are you thinking about? Where's God? Why is God doing this? Should I still have faith in God if He's going to allow this to happen? I mean, think about this. But notice how Habakkuk takes this. Verse 18, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord is my strength. He will make my feet like deer's feet. He will make me walk on high hills. Now notice what he's not saying. And I think here's the difference. Usually with our faith, when we go through trials, what do we usually say when we're going through a trial? And we have faith. I'll just grin and bear it. I can get through it. I'll just grin and bear it. I'll knuckle down. I'll do the best I can to get through it. Sounds reasonable, don't it? But that is not even close to what Habakkuk is saying here. He's not saying I'm going to bear it. He's not saying, well, I'll just get through it. He says, I will take joy in the Lord who is my strength. He's not going to grin and bear it. He said, I'm trusting in God. In Him. He's my strength. Not what He's doing. Not what's around me. Because here's the difference. When we think when something like that happens, what would go through your mind? Here's what would go through mine. I would be doing everything possible to gather up everything I possibly could. I'm a circle the wagon type person. You know, when it comes to shove, I'm going to gather my family right in this little corner here, this little hole. I'm going to circle the wagons. I'm going to fill up everything I possibly can, and I'm going to fight to the very end. Right? That's what we can think. But what if you're at the point where your wealth would do you absolutely no good? When I say wealth, I'm just talking money in general. That's not going to do you any good. So that can't fix it. Your knowledge can't fix it. No matter how smart you are, you can't fix what's about to happen. You can't change what's about to happen. Your wisdom can't change what's about to happen. So everything that we tend to rely on can't fix it. See, here's where the difference is what he was talking about, those who trust in themselves or those who live by faith and walk by faith. Here's where the difference is. If I'm still trusting in myself, I'm going to be so devastated, I'm not going to be able to get through it because I can't fix it. And I'm going to do everything I can to try to fix it. But I can't do it. So I'm going to be devastated. And that's how people go through life. I'll fix it. I'll fix it. I'll just keep piling things on and piling things on and piling things on till eventually you're going to pile one thing too much and you're going to break. And it's going to be devastating when you fall because it's going to do something to your faith. That's if we continue to trust in ourselves. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of everything when we talk about religious deconstruction. Individuals are trusting in themselves. They come across something they don't understand. They come across something they can't accept. They're trying to reason it out in their own mind. They think, well, I can fix my own troubles. I can do this. And before you know it, they part ways with God. But those who walk by faith trust in God, not in the things, and not in the things in which they think God should do. That's what Habakkuk did. He was honest and he said, I trembled. I quaked in my shoes. My lips quivered. I couldn't accept what you were saying. I'm afraid. I'm just waiting on this to happen. But I'm going to take joy in the Lord. He's my strength. And I'm not only going to bear through it, he said He will make my feet like deer's feet. And He will make me walk on high hills. I'm not just going to grit my teeth and bear it. I'm going to trust in Him and rejoice in Him more. as these things are happening. Because if I walk by faith, what's happening to me doesn't matter. What happens is what's to come. So when it all boils down to it, does it really matter? Is it really that devastating? How long does this life last? How long does eternity last? See, it's hard for us to really think on terms like that until we're actually faced with something so devastating, we don't have anything left to fix it. I think that's when our true faith shows, or a lack of faith shows. That's the time when we jump out of the boat, isn't it? When that happens, that's what we do. We jump out of the boat and we walk by faith. Because that's the only thing we can do. And we can't take our eye off of Him. That's what Peter had to learn. Peter was always trusting in himself. He had to trust in the Lord. He had enough faith to get out of the boat. He didn't have enough faith to keep it going. But see, we can't worry about anything else that's around. We've got to trust on Him. Now that's easy to stand up here and say until you're faced with that loss. You're faced with that devastation. You're faced with that when you're sitting at home and you're thinking, now what? I don't know where to go from here. Well, all throughout biblical history here, where did they go when they didn't have anywhere else to go? That's the point we have to get to. Now, how do we get there? I don't think it's overnight. I think it's step by step. I think it's a little bit by little bit. I think it's building it up, building it up, building it up, and hopefully we're never faced with something like this. But what if we are? Where will our faith be? Will it be like Habakkuk? Okay, I think that's it, and we'll move on to another subject now after this. Thank you for your patience and listening.